Hello, I'm Daniele, and I'm going to talk about the subject-focused construction in Hadza. I will present its formal aspects and its functional behavior, in virtue of which I endorse the subject-focused construction nomenclature proposed by Harvey et al. 2026. Then I will compare the focus systems of Hadza and Sandawi, and finally, I will propose a reconstruction of an older system for Hadza and the grammaticalization path leading to the new construction. So let's start talking about the subject-focused construction from its formal aspects. We can see in table 1 the non-pass paradigm of the construction. Meto, koto, biicho, e beeto. And in table 2, the past paradigm, ma'a, ko'a, bi'a, be'a. As the construction is morphologically transparent, I will present its components separately. So the first part of the construction is similar to and occupies the same morphological slot of the regular gender number noun suffixes, apart from the singular masculine me. So the singular masculine is unmarked, the feminine is ko, the masculine plural is bi, and the feminine plural is be'e. The second part of the construction is composed by a double set of clerics. One for past tense, a, and one for non-past tense, to. These are homophonic with some subject TAM clerics that usually attaches to verbs. It is also important to notice that the presence of the subject focalization construction blocks the otherwise obligatory subject clerics. I will talk about this relationship later on. Let's now look at the functional behavior of the construction. These and the next examples are representative of Sands 2013 and Miller et al. 2023's corpus of examples for the construction, where it is being employed as a contrastive or informative focus marker, and it is translated with a cleft sentence. In one, onga ma'a aane, it is her who leads, but we could also translate it with just the focus intonation. In two, epeme aine ma'a ela. The theme, it was God who created it, or the theme, God created it. Of course, in this case, no epeme, the epeme. In this case, the epeme is the topic. The construction can also be employed as an informative focus marker on interrogative pronouns in 3, akumeto za, who has come, or who is it that has come. In 4, we can see the typical information structure of a phrase where the construction is being employed. Onoko a elatta kitabu ko. It is I who made the book. These can be the answer to who made the book, and that would be informative focus. Or it can be the answer to John made the book, and that would be contrastive focus. The rest of the phrase is given elements. The main function of the construction is to mark focus, but it also expresses values of other grammatical categories, such as gender, number, tense, and dependent marking of the subject. Since the construction is never used to form relative clauses and always used to focalize subjects, I agree with Harvey et al. 2026 nomenclature of subject-focused construction, rejecting the former relative construction label. I will now present an overview of the Hadza focus system and then compare it with that of Sandow. So the first strategy that Hadza employs is the morphological subject focus construction that I've talked about. The second strategy is syntactic. Object can be focalized through the positional means of VOS order. We can see field, hat, baboon in this order, in 5. And the third strategy is the movement of focus elements in first or preverbal position. This also very often, if not always, co-occurs with the subject focus strategy, and also with the other syntactic strategy, a procedure that involves the bearing of the subject TAM clerics. This procedure is only productive with adverbials and interrogative pronouns. As we see in 7, where apina beta, where apina is an adverb bearing beta, the anterior subject clitic. Now I will compare Hadza and Sandowi focus strategies. Both languages have a dedicated morphological marking for subject focus and share a strategy that involves the bearing of the subject TAM clerics. While this latter pattern is the most productive in Sandow, it is limited in Hadza to adverbials and interrogative pronouns. But traces of it can also be seen on the subject focus construction. Following these traces, I will propose a reconstruction of an older focus system similar to that of Sandow. I will now present some arguments for the subject TAM cleric origin of the subject focus construction. The first argument is that the presence of the construction blocks the expression of the otherwise obligatory subject modality or TAM cleric. As we can see in 8, the direct object is marked on the verb, but there is no clitic subject anywhere. This can be explained functionally with the redundancy of marking the subject 2 times, or formally with the retaining of the construction of some syntactic property. The second argument is the productive tense encoding past non-past alternance of the focus construction paradigm. This encoding is obviously usually realized by the subject TAM clerics. In 9 and 10, the subject cleric is absent, and the tense, maybe also the aspect, is expressed by the construction. This can be explained with the retaining of some semantic and inflectional properties, also in virtue of the next argument. The third argument is that ta and a are also synchronically productive as subject TAM clerics. Ta is a bare anterior subject cleric in first singular, and the anterior submorpheme in first plural, second singular, and second plural anterior subject clerics. While a is the posterior submorpheme of the posterior clitics paradigm. The fourth argument is that subject TAM clerics still have some mobility. They can appear on full verbs, auxiliaries, adverbs, and interrogative pronouns. In the two latter cases, with a focusing function. It is more likely for the system to have lost some of its potential than for it to have developed independently from the subject focus construction a focusing function. So, as for the grammaticalization hypothesis, it must have occurred at a time where the subject clitics were more movable, at least being able to attach to subjects, and their bearing expressed focus, just like in Sandawe. The functional markedness of the focus subject, which is an atypical locus of focus, triggered a process of grammaticalization. The subject clitics were reanalyzed as morphological focus markers, and the gender number noun suffixes were crystallized as part of the construction at a time when the masculine singular me was still productive as a masculine singular noun suffix. Later, or in parallel, the clitic bearing focus strategy fell off. The result of these processes is an asymmetrical marking system. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you very much, Daniele.
It was a great talk. I really enjoyed it. I noticed that there is some polysemy between copulates and focus markers that's been noted cross-linguistically in this paper areas, and then we'll let Tom have his question because he knows a lot more about focus than I do.
So between copulas and focus markers, I've seen that like in Heine and Kuteva, copulas are the only resources for the grammaticalization of focus markers, of morphological focus markers. I don't know if that's actually the case. In this case, it seems to me that it's a different story. Yeah.
Thank you. Tom, feel free to unmute yourself.
I have a question. I'm not sure whether I understood the hypothesis correctly, but I understood the idea would be the subject focus construction is an innovation. And my question is, couldn't it be the other way around, that the other contexts where you have the subject, possibly also tense clitics, namely now on the verb and other things, used to be focus constructions and as well, and there the focus force was lost. I mean, as I said, I'm not so sure whether I did understood your scenario properly, but I mean, my idea would be subject focus is always marked because normally typical subjects are topics. So this focus structure would be maintained as well as after adverbials, but those clitics on the verb, for instance, could mean originally it was a verb focus construction, but since the verb is always the head and the assertion of a clause, the focus component, the information structural component got lost. So would that be a possible idea? As I said, I'm not sure whether I understood everything in the formal stuff.
Yeah, I think it might be possible as a general procedure of grammaticalization, but in this case, I find it that it will be hard because there is actually a quite wide set of subject TAM clerics that express like present or past or non-past tense and different moods, while there are only two of those subject focus marking clerics. So it makes sense to me that the bottleneck is from a variety of subject TAM clerics that get selected to only two fundamental clerics to express the focus, and also the tense, because in the phrases where the subject focus construction appears, the clerics cannot be present, so the tense and the expect cannot be expressed if not through this way. But it would be pretty hard to explain why from only a couple of clerics then we have a system with much more subject clerics that can attach on verb and other things, and that can express a more wide variety of functions.
Okay, I think it would be have a look at focus and clitic placement. I think the idea would be that it's in many languages those grammatical clitics which have other functions, such just their pure placement is the focus construction. So the clitics as such have all kinds of function, but where they are placed, namely after something, this is the focus of a clause. So that would be my logic, and so this is kind of orthogonal to that to the fact that the clitics themselves convey tense, aspect, mode, subject, and stuff. But okay, anyway, thanks a lot for your interesting talk.
This is exactly the system of Sandawe, if I understand.
Yes, I know.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. And from this, it would grammaticalize to, lose the general focus function and only maintain some the TAM function on verbs and maintain the focus function only on subjects. Did I understand correctly?
That would be my idea. Yes, okay. Yes. Clitics would be just syntactic markers of focus, and on verbs and other things, they just lost the focus function and are basically just now grammatical markers on the clause or predicate and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, I will think about this idea.
Lots to chew on. Brilliant. Margherita has a question. Feel free to unmute yourself, Margherita.
I wanted to ask a question to the three of them. So, since I know them personally, I know that they don't have much knowledge in Hadza as a language. So I really wanted to tell them that you made a great job. It was very interesting and honestly inspiring. But my question was, since we all have the same knowledge, what type of did you encounter any difficulty, anything that was hard for you to understand, since like where the data is enough? I don't know, did I make myself clear?
Okay, for me it was so I had some rough time with the data because I did find a couple of examples of the subject focus construction in the data Andrew Harvey provided us. But it seemed to contradict a bit the fact that the construction I analyzed was actually a subject focus construction, because the noun it applied on was probably an object. It surely wasn't a subject, but it was also in a phrase that might have been stopped and restarted, reconfigured. So it was a bit weird, and yeah. So this the other difficulty, because my work was a bit more on the information structure side. It would have been easier if the data was about discussions rather than telling a story, because if it was like a discussion with more question and answer, I could have seen maybe more focused elements.
Giuseppe, you had unmuted yourself, so maybe from one person struggling with getting information structure data from the materials to somebody else struggling with information structure, maybe you have something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that what I found it difficult was like to, of course, not knowing the language. I really had to have this very much trust on the glosses at first, but then I realized that sometimes I couldn't agree 100%. So I had to like find the sweet spot between between the trustworthy and actually analyze the data. And I think that maybe like diving more into the language kind of makes us more confident in actually understanding the phenomena as well.
So the takeaway is never trust the glosses.
Yeah, for me it was the biggest problem was that I wanted to have my data as clear as possible. So I wanted to, if I chose that example, it had to be a really simple example. And sometimes I kind of struggled with it because some examples were like, you could say, okay, this is a good example, but maybe not that clear, or maybe the glosses weren't that clear, or maybe some words were not like glossed. So I tried to make it as clear as possible, but at the same time I couldn't interfere too much because they're not my data. I don't know anything about them. So that was my biggest struggle.
I should add the caveat about trusting the glosses. That is true even if you're the linguist collecting the data, because there were times when the Hadza speakers, their Kiswahili was different than standard Swahili. And so even though I had a certain meaning for that Swahili word and they had a meaning, we all often didn't have the same meaning. And so you had to really inspect it like a linguist rather than treating a gloss as something that's true.
Do we have any other reactions to this particular question? A nice question, Margherita, in terms of our process and how we went about doing this.